My sister lied about me ruining her marriage, made my family skip my wedding, and now wants my baby because she can't have one. My husband, 28 male, and I, 27 female, were married last year, but our wedding day wasn't the joyful celebration I had dreamed of since I was a little girl. Instead, it was marked by empty seats, whispers of betrayal, and the crushing realization that my sister, 30 female, had successfully turned my family against me. Growing up, my sister, Hannah, and I had an unsteady relationship. She was the golden child, charming, ambitious, and always in the spotlight. I, on the other hand, was quieter, content to stay out of the chaos she often brought into our household. Our parents, especially my mom, always sided with her, brushing off her tantrums and excusing her manipulative behavior. "That's just how Hannah is," they'd say whenever she did something hurtful. I learned to pick my battles with her, but as I got older, I started to realize just how deep her entitlement ran. When I got engaged to my husband, James, everything started to unravel. Hannah had been married for 5 years to her husband, Matt, and from the outside, their marriage seemed perfect. But 2 months before my wedding, she called me in tears, saying Matt had left her. She claimed it was because I had introduced him to one of my college friends years ago, insinuating that I was the reason he had started cheating. I was stunned. Not only was her accusation false, but she refused to believe me when I told her I had barely even seen Matt outside of family gatherings, let alone introduced him to anyone. Hannah's heartbreak quickly became the center of attention in our family. My parents, as expected, rallied around her, comforting her and taking her side without hesitation. I tried to be there for her, even though her accusations hurt deeply. But as my wedding approached, I began noticing a shift in how my family treated me. My mom was colder during our phone calls, and my dad stopped returning my texts altogether. Even my cousins, who had always been close to me, started avoiding conversations about the wedding. 2 weeks before the big day, I got the confirmation I was dreading. My mom called to tell me that she and my dad wouldn't be attending the wedding. She said they needed to support Hannah during this difficult time. I was crushed. I begged her to reconsider, explaining that this was one of the most important days of my life, but she wouldn't budge. "You'll have other milestones," she said dismissively. "Your sister only has us right now." It didn't stop there. Within days, I began receiving messages from other family members saying they couldn't come either. Every excuse seemed thinly veiled, and I could feel Hannah's fingerprints all over it. My aunt even told me outright that Hannah had called her, crying about how my wedding was a cruel reminder of her failed marriage. By the time the wedding day arrived, over half of the seats reserved for my family were empty. Despite the heartbreak, the ceremony itself was beautiful. James and his family did everything they could to fill the void left by mine. His mom walked me down the aisle, holding my hand tightly as I fought back tears. His siblings and extended family danced and celebrated with us late into the night, making me feel loved in a way my own family couldn't. But even with their support, I couldn't shake the sting of betrayal. After the wedding, I decided to put some distance between myself and my family. I needed time to heal, and I wasn't ready to confront them about how much they had hurt me. For months, I avoided their calls and focused on building my life with James. We bought a house, adopted a dog, and started planning for the future. Slowly, I began to feel a sense of peace returning. But Hannah wasn't done with me. A few months ago, James and I announced that we were expecting our first child. It was an emotional moment for us, especially since we had been trying for over a year. When I shared the news with my family in a group chat, I was met with silence. Hours later, Hannah called me, and her tone was icy. "Congratulations," she said, her voice dripping with bitterness. "Must be nice to have everything you've ever wanted." I tried to ignore her passive aggressiveness and told her I hoped she could be happy for me, but she cut me off. "Do you even think about how this makes me feel?" she snapped. "You get to have a baby while I'll never get that chance. It's not fair, and you know it." It was the first time I had heard her admit she was infertile. I didn't know what to say, so I just apologized, even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. But from that moment on, her resentment only grew. Last week, my parents showed up unannounced at our house. It was the first time I'd seen them in person since the wedding, and they could tell something was off. They exchanged nervous glances as they sat on our couch, refusing to meet my eyes. Finally, my mom spoke up. "Hannah's been struggling a lot lately," she began. "We've been talking, and we think it would be a good idea if she was involved in raising your baby." I stared at her, not sure I had heard her correctly. "What are you talking about?" I asked. My dad chimed in. "You know how hard this has been for her. She's always wanted kids, and this could be a way to give her some joy. We're not saying she'd take the baby, of course, but maybe you could let her have some parental responsibilities." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were essentially asking me to share my child with the sister who had sabotaged my wedding and spread lies about me. I told them, firmly, that it wasn't going to happen. My mom's face fell, and she looked at me like I was the cruelest person in the world. "You're being selfish," she said. "Hannah needs this more than you know. You've already got everything. A husband, a house, a baby on the way. Can't you see how much she's hurting?" I stood up, shaking with anger. Hannah has made it her mission to ruin every happy moment of my life, I said. She doesn't get to be a part of this one. They left shortly after, but not before my dad muttered, I hope you can live with yourself. Since then, I've been getting non-stop messages from my family, accusing me of being heartless. Even some of James's family members think I should consider letting Hannah be more involved, saying it might help heal the rift between us. But I can't do it. I won't let her use my child as a band-aid for her own unhappiness. After my parents left that day, I sat on the couch for hours replaying the conversation in my head. Their words cut deep, not because they hurt me, but because they made me realize just how little they cared about my happiness. In their eyes, Hannah's pain always came first, no matter what. It didn't matter that she had lied about me ruining her marriage or that she convinced half our family to skip the most important day of my life. Now, they wanted me to hand over my baby, my child, to heal her. James found me later that evening, still sitting there, staring blankly at the wall. He immediately knew something was wrong. When I told him what my parents had suggested, his face turned red with anger. They've completely lost it, he said, pacing back and forth. This is your family we're talking about. The same people who didn't bother showing up to our wedding. And now they're acting like your sister has some kind of right to our child. No way, absolutely not. Hearing him say it out loud helped ground me. I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. For so long, my family had conditioned me to believe that standing up for myself was selfish, that setting boundaries was wrong. But James reminded me that I didn't owe them anything, especially not after everything they'd done. That night, I sent a long message to my parents. I told them I needed space and that until they could respect my boundaries, I wouldn't be involving them in my life or my child's. I tried to be calm and rational, but the anger seeped through in places. How could they expect me to prioritize Hannah after everything she'd done? How could they not see how toxic her behavior was? Predictably, they didn't take it well. My mom called me the next morning, leaving a voicemail laced with guilt-tripping and emotional manipulation. We're only trying to help Hannah, she said. She's your sister. Family is supposed to stick together, no matter what. It was the same refrain I'd heard my whole life. Family comes first, but what did that mean for me? Did my feelings, my happiness, my future not matter because I wasn't Hannah? For weeks, I stuck to my decision. I didn't respond to their calls or messages, even when they started involving other family members. My aunt texted me, saying she was disappointed in me for turning my back on my sister. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me out of the blue, asking if I really planned to cut off my parents over something so small. But the worst was Hannah herself. She sent me a long, rambling email, claiming that I was ruining her life yet again. She accused me of being selfish and heartless, of deliberately flaunting my pregnancy to hurt her. She even brought up Matt, saying that if I had been a better sister, he might never have left her. I hope your baby doesn't grow up to be like you, she wrote at the end, cruel, ungrateful, and alone. Her words stung, but they didn't break me. If anything, they solidified my resolve. Hannah had no remorse for the things she'd done, no sense of accountability. She wanted me to feel guilty for living my life, for being happy, and I refused to give her that power anymore. As the months passed, James and I prepared for the arrival of our baby. His family was a constant source of support, showering us with love and excitement. His mom threw us a beautiful baby shower, and his sisters helped me set up the nursery. For the first time, I felt what it was like to have a family that truly cared about me, without strings attached. But my family's interference didn't stop. As my due date approached, my mom showed up at our house again, this time uninvited. I was alone, and the sight of her standing on my doorstep made my stomach drop. I just want to talk, she said, holding up her hands as if to show she meant no harm. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the edge of the couch, clutching her purse tightly. I know you're upset with me, she began, but I think we've all said things we didn't mean. I didn't respond, waiting for her to get to the point. Hannah's really struggling, she continued. She's been seeing a therapist, but it's not enough. She needs something to give her hope again, something to look forward to. Don't you think letting her be part of your baby's life could help with that? I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. This isn't about giving Hannah hope, I said finally. This is about her trying to control my life. She's been doing it for years, and you've let her. I'm not going to let her use my child as a way to fix her problems. My mom's face hardened. You're being unreasonable, she said. You have no idea what it's like to lose everything. Hannah's lost her husband, her future family. All we're asking is for you to show a little compassion. A little compassion, I repeated, my voice shaking. Where was Hannah's compassion when she lied about me? When she convinced you and everyone else to skip my wedding? Where was your compassion when I begged you to be there for me and you chose her instead? She didn't have an answer. Instead, she stood up, her expression a mix of anger and disappointment. I hope you don't regret this, she said before walking out the door. That was the last time I saw her. 2 weeks later, our baby girl was born. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of love and protection. This tiny human was mine, and I would do everything in my power to keep her safe, even if it meant cutting ties with my own family. Since her birth, I've heard through mutual relatives that Hannah is furious with me, claiming I've stolen the life she deserved. My parents haven't reached out directly, but I know they're siding with her, as always. Part of me mourns the loss of the family I once had, but another part feels freer than I ever have. James and I are focused on building a life for our daughter, one filled with love, stability, and boundaries. I may not have the support of the people who raised me, but I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who show up for you, who love you unconditionally, and who respect your choices. Hannah will never be that for me. My parents will never be that for me. But James and our little girl, they're my family now. Update. It's been 6 months since I gave birth to my daughter, Emma, and I wanted to share an update on everything that's happened since. To say the past few months have been a roller coaster would be an understatement. After Emma was born, I stayed firm in my decision to keep my family at a distance. It wasn't easy, especially when I started getting messages from my parents again. My mom sent a long email a week after Emma's birth, demanding to know why I hadn't let her know when I went into labor. She accused me of being cruel for keeping her from meeting her granddaughter and begged me to reconsider, allowing Hannah to play a role in Emma's life. I ignored the email, but the guilt lingered for days. I've always been someone who second-guesses my decisions, and my parents know exactly how to exploit that. For a moment, I even considered replying, maybe trying to explain my feelings one last time. But James reminded me that I'd already given them plenty of chances to change, and they'd proven time and time again where their loyalty lay. Not long after, my mom decided to escalate things. She showed up at James's workplace, catching him completely off guard. She told him she deserved to see her granddaughter and tried to convince him that I was being unreasonable by cutting them off. Thankfully, James shut her down. He told her that until she and my dad could respect our boundaries, there would be no relationship. The incident left me shaken. It was one thing for them to harass me, but now they were dragging James into their mess. I decided to speak with a lawyer about my options. While my family hadn't done anything extreme enough to warrant the restraining order, I wanted to make sure I was prepared in case they tried something more drastic. The lawyer advised me to document everything, every message, every unwanted visit, so I could build a case if necessary. A few weeks later, things took an even darker turn. I received a call from an aunt who's always been close to my parents and Hannah. She told me she thought I was being unfair by cutting off my family, but then she dropped a bombshell. Apparently, Hannah had been telling people that she was planning to petition for visitation rights to my daughter. At first, I thought it was a bluff. Hannah isn't Emma's parent, she has no legal standing. But the fact that she would even consider such a thing sent a chill down my spine. I immediately called my lawyer, who reassured me that Hannah didn't have a case, but the possibility of a legal battle still weighed heavily on me. Around this time, I started going to therapy. James suggested it after noticing how much stress the situation was causing me. I've always been the type to hold my feelings inside, but the weight of my family's manipulation was starting to affect my mental health. Therapy has been a game changer for me. My therapist has helped me unpack years of emotional abuse and guilt, and I'm finally learning how to prioritize my own needs without feeling selfish. Through therapy, I've also started to reevaluate my relationship with my parents. For so long, I've been chasing their approval, hoping they'd one day see me as equally important as Hannah. But now I realize that their favoritism isn't a reflection of my worth, it's a reflection of their own shortcomings as parents. Letting go of that need for validation has been liberating. As for Hannah, she's continued to escalate her behavior. She recently posted a long, dramatic rant on Facebook, accusing me of stealing her happiness and cutting her out of Emma's life. She painted herself as the victim, conveniently leaving out all the ways she's hurt me over the years. Some of our extended family members sided with her, sending me nasty messages and calling me a cold-hearted sister. At first, I was tempted to respond to set the record straight. But then I realized something. I don't owe anyone an explanation. The people who truly care about me, James, his family, my close friends, they know the truth. I don't need to waste my energy trying to convince others. Recently, James and I made a big decision. We're planning to move to another state in the next few months. It's something we've been considering for a while, but the situation with my family solidified our choice. We want to give Emma a fresh start, away from the toxic dynamics that have plagued my relationship with my parents and sister. It's a bittersweet decision, but I know it's the right one. As I write this, Emma is napping in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. She's the most beautiful, precious thing in my life, and I'm determined to protect her from the dysfunction that defied my childhood. I want her to grow up knowing she's loved unconditionally, that she doesn't have to earn her place in our family. I still have moments of doubt. Sometimes, I wonder if cutting off my parents and Hannah entirely is the right thing to do. But then I remind myself of all the pain they've caused me, the lies, the betrayal, the manipulation, and I know I'm making the best choice for myself and my daughter. Family isn't about blood, it's about love, respect, and mutual support. And while I may not have that with the people who raised me, I found it with James, Emma, and the family we're building together. Moving forward, I'm focusing on healing. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my family, but for now, I'm at peace with my decision to walk away. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself, and it feels damn good.